25 years ago, two students unleashed horror inside Columbine High School, killing 13 people, most of them students. That act of violence shaped a new generation, one where active shooter drills became the norm and mass trauma events began to plague our country, leaving so many traumatized survivors, first responders, grieving families. But there's a group of people who came together with shared experiences, leaning on one another, proving that while the path to healing is long and winding, life after loss is possible. Our Morgan Norwood takes us to Littleton, Colorado, all these years later for tonight's Prime Focus.
Here in Colorado, we have a pretty substantial homeless problem. And so we decided to do a campaign called Opening Cans of Love. We would try and get can openers for the cans. 25 bags of food, which is a bag of food for every year that everything has happened.
For Missy Mendo and countless others, there was a life before Columbine.
We do know that several victims have been taken to hospitals across the metro area.
A time when images like these were rare, shocking, and unsettling.
A massacre in a small town high school.
Now is life after Columbine.
Never in my wildest dreams did I think this would have ever happened in my life or in my community.
People are getting shot all around me.
The mass shooting inside Columbine High School in Littleton, Colorado killed 13 people, most of them students.
This is the Denver Rocky Mountain News, where the word simply is horror, and that really says it all.
Since that day, April 20th, 1999, 25 years ago, more than 370,000 students have experienced gun violence at school.
I barricaded with 59 other students in the choir office for 3 hours until SWAT came and got us out.
For the teen survivors, now firmly in adulthood, and teachers, some in the twilight of their careers, it's hard to look back. But back then, it was even harder to look forward.
I had realized that because of what I had been through, that I had had more funerals than I had had birthdays at that point.
We didn't have any context for a school shooting, couldn't name a school shooting.
It's a big part of my identity and who I am, and not necessarily that day, but more who I've become, and a large part of that is because of the aftermath, overcoming.
Their lives forever intertwined in an act of public violence that has become so notorious it's taken ownership of a single word: Columbine.
At first we thought it was just firecrackers, and then until we saw the black guns come out of the trench coat, and that's when we knew it was real.
How often do you pass this school?
When I first moved back from the East Coast, it was hard. I would get anxiety. I would try to avoid the road. 6 weeks of therapy after it initially started, I received the insomnia diagnosis as well as the question of PTSD. Somebody had asked my mom, when did you feel that Melissa was going to be, or that Missy was going to be different? And she said, I knew Missy was going to be different because she was 14 years old, sleeping with her shoes on in between her parents every night for weeks. It used to be a very emotionally charged street, but now it's every day, and sometimes I think about it, sometimes I don't. I do feel like I put that pressure on myself because I wanted to feel better. Who wouldn't want to feel better immediately after something like that? I don't want to project anything onto my kid. And so I decided to go back into therapy because I didn't want to project anything onto her. And if there was something that I could prepare my kid for the best opportunity in life, I was going to do that.
The years following the shooting, living in the shadows of insidious trauma, Missy and the others sought understanding, something they only found in those who could understand their unique pain.
Heather, Kiki, you were also survivors of Columbine?
I was a senior in 1999, and I was in choir class, and then gunfire erupted outside the door, and a lot of the students ran out one of the exits, and I did not. I'm not sure why. I think it was just like, don't overreact, we don't really know what's happening.
And Kiki, you were in the room with Principal DeAngelis as you found out.
Right, yeah, I was with Frank in his office, and his secretary came in to let us know, or let him know, that it was coming over the radios that there were shots fired in the Commons. As I saw Frank run down the hall, I could also see the silhouette of a person holding a long gun.
This was your first time on the job here.
Yeah, it was my first year teaching, and still here, still teaching, but couldn't imagine, leaving or being anywhere else.
I want to fast forward a few days after the shooting. Take me through what that was like.
It was televised. Everybody was watching the graduation. We had seniors who were killed that day, so it was very emotional. It was a really emotional time and really confusing because you are celebrating this mile mark in your life. Like, I remember feeling just so conflicted, like, how can I celebrate and how can I do anything while, this has just happened.
Yeah, Missy, you've talked about that Survivors Guild.
Yeah, I feel I didn't recognize that was something that I was experiencing in my life until many, many years later. What was happening in my brain and in my body, but I couldn't put a name on it.
In a snowball effect of grief and loss, Missy, Heather, and Kiki became the first modern iteration of mass shooting survivors, finding solace in their similarities in a group that only grows beyond Columbine.
Sherry, you're also a survivor.
Yes. So I survived the Washington Navy Yard shooting that took place in 2013.
At this hour, it appears that we have at least 12 fatalities.
It was just like, you got to get out. We go downstairs, we get out into this alleyway, we hear this loud boom right on the other side of the wall. What I didn't know at the time is that the shooter was running behind the pack of folks I was with and had come out of the same door and shot someone in the alley as soon as I had gotten over. A lot of what we were hearing afterwards were, we're Navy strong, this is not going to defeat us, we're okay, we're good. And I tried that for a few weeks, but I wasn't okay.
I survived the Aurora Theater shooting that happened in 2012 in July. At the time, I was identifying as female, and I was just a little kid. The whole theater was full. The only seats left available were the very front row. I dove down into that aisle and hid with my best friend and all the other people in our aisle, and you could just hear loud sounds. I finally get out, and that's when the cops are finally able to come in because everybody was going out because it was like a stampede of people.
That group evolved into the Rebels Project, a network of survivors who support one another across the country.
The Rebels Project was formed after Aurora happened to reach out to that community. They are all a big part of my healing journey because up until then I felt like I had to be strong. I couldn't not be okay.
I feel like in a group of survivors like the Rebels Project, they understand those kinds of things.
You all have shared your experiences, but do you see any similarities?
I think one of the biggest similarities is actually in the differences of that nobody is ever really on the same track at the same time, but we all have the same steps. I think survivors they judge themselves and they feel like they should be over it and they should be fine, and so they're really hard on themselves, and so any little bit feels like someone else is judging you, but survivors we don't do that.
I was a mess for quite a while, and sometimes I feel like I think about how did I look to my wife and kids back then, and what was I missing because I was not in the best place.
It became very hard to articulate what I was experiencing to my family and to my friends. I had a stroke in December of 2014, sitting on my couch watching a Hallmark movie. It was like my right carotid ruptured because I was so stressed and I'm not okay. And trying to explain that to folks was really hard. But these folks got it.
I didn't sleep, I passed out because I would drink myself to a stupor. And I wasn't functional. I think my PTSD was one extreme or the other. There wasn't a lot of gray, there wasn't a lot of balance. It took a few years of sobriety and therapy for me to have my system start to settle.
There's no denying that as time uncovers cloudy memories, the eternal work of surviving reveals itself. This group serving as proof of concept that there is life after loss.
Columbine is actually the state flower of Colorado. It was chosen for its capability of growing in such high altitudes and such thin air. These are all evolutions that I feel like will also change with time, just like us. Everybody grieves differently, and you just can't let it divide you.
Sometimes tragedy fosters passion. Our thanks to Morgan Norwood for that.